Welcome to Clinical Capsule, your trusted guide for clear and concise medical learning.
When looking through the standard medical models on healthy aging recently, a massive paradigm shift really jumped out. We're moving away from just, treating illnesses after they happen. Instead, the clinical evidence is actually handing us a practical survival guide for healthy aging. So today is all about taking that raw data and turning it into actionable, daily habits that you can use to profoundly impact your long-term health. Let's get into it. To really understand this shift, we first need to look at what our actual goals are. For the last century, public health and modern medicine have done a pretty fantastic job of extending our lifespan. We're living longer than ever before, which is great. But the modern medical goal isn't just about a longer lifespan anymore. It's about maximizing our health span. Health span is the period of our lives we actually spend in good health, totally free from the chronic diseases and disabilities that often come with aging. The goal here is what they call compressing morbidity. Basically, you want to squeeze the burden of disease into a really short window right at the very end of life, rather than suffering through decades of chronic illness.
Think about what we normally expect from getting older. What's considered normative aging is generally accepted as this gradual, steady decline in our overall stock of health, right? You get a little older, you slow down a bit, you pick up a few chronic conditions, and eventually that decline accelerates. But the alternative to that is this incredibly empowering concept called squaring the curve. Through what clinicians call primordial prevention, which basically just means stopping risk factors from ever developing in the first place, we can maintain a nearly full stock of health for the vast majority of our lives. We keep that curve flat and high until shortly before death.
Okay, let's just dive right into our outline and lay out the 4 fundamental pillars of health we're going to be tackling today to help you square your own curve. We'll be covering building a healthy plate, moving for better health, the science of sleep, and winning the weight battle. Let's start right off with our first pillar, building a healthy plate and navigating those complex dietary guidelines.
So what should we actually eat? It is literally the central question that confuses so many patients, and it makes sense. We are constantly bombarded by complex nutritional information, conflicting advice, and, whatever the latest internet fad diet happens to be. Yet get this, estimates from the U.S. National Health and Nutrition Survey indicate that fewer than 1% of Americans achieve an optimal heart-healthy eating pattern, less than 1%. So despite all the noise out there, the clinical evidence actually points to just a few simple, highly sustainable habits.
What's really interesting here is how cleanly the official dietary guidelines break down into exactly what to put in your body and what to keep out. On the include side, we're talking about nutrient-dense whole foods. Think a wide variety of vegetables, whole fruits, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy oils like olive or canola oil. And then there's what we need to actively limit. The official recommendations are less than 10% of your daily calories from added sugars, less than 10% from saturated fats, and keeping your sodium under 2,300 milligrams a day. A really simple rule of thumb to achieve this: prepare the majority of your own meals starting from scratch with whole foods, because sodium and refined sugars are basically the hallmark of our processed food supply.
Honestly, the absolute simplest rule you can follow when you sit down for a meal: just look at your plate. Make half of it fruits and vegetables. Literally, 50%. Then just divide the remaining half into 25% lean protein and 25% whole grains. If you do this and you use healthy oils for cooking, you are naturally going to align with all those complex dietary guidelines without having to obsessively count every single micronutrient. It's a total game changer.
All right, moving right along to our second pillar, moving for better health and the incredible power of physical activity.
The absolute crucial point here is an incredibly empowering clinical heuristic straight from the source material. It says, if you are doing nothing, do something. And if you are doing something, do more. Every day. I love that. The medical evidence is so clear here. The single biggest marginal benefit for your health comes from simply going from completely sedentary to just slightly active. You really don't have to start out as a marathon runner. Any physical activity is way better than none.
So if we look at the clinical targets, the magic number for adults is 150. That is 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity per week. Now, moderate intensity just means your heart rate and breathing are up, maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10 on your personal exertion scale. We're talking about highly accessible stuff here: brisk walking, riding a bike on level ground, or, hey, even just dancing in your living room. You want to do these in episodes of at least 10 minutes and ideally spread them out evenly throughout the week.
Alternatively, if you're someone who likes to push a bit harder and maybe save some time, your target is 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity per week. This is activity that really increases your heart rate and breathing. We're talking a 7 or 8 out of 10 on the effort scale. Think jogging, swimming continuous laps, or playing singles tennis. Oh, and a really important side note. Independent of your exercise routine, sedentary time itself has serious adverse health consequences. So even if you hit these numbers, make absolutely sure you're standing up and stretching throughout your normal workday.
Now we arrive at our third pillar, the science of sleep, recharging your health.
We really need to stop viewing sleep as just this passive state of rest where we just turn off for the night. Sleep is a highly active, vital physiological process. For optimal adult health, the clinically recommended window is 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. And I cannot stress this enough. Sleeping less than 7 hours is definitely not a badge of honor. It is associated with huge health risks. Chronic short sleep skyrockets your risk for obesity, diabetes, elevated blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and even depression. It literally impairs your immune function and your cognitive performance. Hitting that 7 to 9 hour window is the foundation for everything else.
Now, if you're tossing and turning and struggling to hit those hours, we have to talk about sleep hygiene. Regular use of sedative medications should generally be discouraged because of the risk of dependence, and they actually alter your true sleep quality. Instead, the data points to some really simple daily habits. Build natural fatigue by getting that physical activity in during the day. Avoid eating heavy meals or drinking alcohol close to bedtime. Alcohol completely wrecks your sleep architecture, by the way. Try to maintain a regular sleep schedule, meaning going to bed and waking up at the exact same time every day. And finally, if you're still having trouble, use a simple sleep log to track your patterns and figure out what might be keeping you awake.
And that brings us to our fourth and final pillar, winning the weight battle, a step-by-step approach.
Look, we have to acknowledge right up front that weight loss is one of the absolute most difficult preventative interventions to achieve and sustain. It's tough, but it can be mastered when we stop looking for a magical quick fix and start framing it around manageable, sequential steps. Step 1 is simply weight stabilization. So many of the health risks of obesity are driven by the continuous progressive accumulation of weight over time. Just stopping the weight gain is a massive, highly successful first victory. Step 2 is achieving a negative calorie balance through a combo of eating less and moving more. And Step 3 is experimentation and documentation. There's absolutely no one-size-fits-all solution here. You have to experiment to find what dietary pattern keeps you full and actually fits your lifestyle. And you've got to document your intake and activity using logs or apps to ensure you are actually in that negative balance.
Well, we've covered a ton of ground today in this explainer, from building a better plate and moving your body to prioritizing your sleep and approaching weight loss systematically. When reviewing the clinical approach to all of this, there's this really powerful concept called motivational interviewing. The big takeaway from it: success simply comes from finding the one area you personally feel ready to change. So, I'll leave you with this provocative question. Look at these 4 pillars. Which one of them are you ready to change today? Pick just one, start small, and take your very first step towards squaring your curve.